high-level research style. These times have changed. Now academics is back, and Gunther is back to Russia. But he will share some of his research with us and try to give a certain foundation of what is Goethean way of seeing the living in nature.
So, good evening from that side again. And thank you, Raphael, for the introduction. And I'm really happy after a lot of years to be again back in Norway to meet that very different country, nature. And what I was astonished all these times I've been in Norway, traveling around. And now again, when I went through the park of the palace or castle, these strong elm trees you have here. In Middle Europe, they disappear. And the ones we have in Russia, they are different. So, and that mercurial quality, I loved to meet it always. When Raphael wrote to look through Goethe's eyes or something like that, you formulated it. I want to begin with a gesture, and afterwards perhaps the gesture will be understandable. That is such a gesture. And about that I want to talk about.
We want to see it once more.
Once more. But first perhaps a short remark about Goethe and what's meant with Goetheanism. Because often when I met people who heard something about it, they had the opinion Goetheanism is a different form, a different method to look at nature, but an alternative method. But it's much more than this. It's not just a method. It's a complete different way to meet at the total human being what is around. Not only nature. It's only those two parts of his research work in physics with the colors and in botany with the plants where he developed that kind of thinking. Goethe developed for the natural science. There he did it to a quite deep point, but it's much more than only to look in a different way at plants or at colors or at this or that. And if you look at his biography, one half he has been artist writing, and the other half he has been natural scientist. And that is not by chance. And we could talk a lot about it, but I don't want to go deep in, just to give an imagination what he did. If you are an artist, you get an inspiration. And that inspiration lives inside the artist. And he connects the inspiration with his will. And if the will and the idea, the inspiration, starts to become one in itself, that inner moving of the idea begins to form. And then he experiences a form, the artist. And the last step is to find the material to realize that form. It could be music, words, color, stone, what clay, what you need to realize it. But it's the 4 steps you can, in an artist, see there is an inspiration, and that's the realm of freedom. Which inspiration I take. Then the will is active, and out of that will activity with the idea, a certain form develops, and that form becomes material. Or material. And the same way Goethe did it with the nature. There was an inner understanding of the nature is an artist. I would say like this. But there we have already what nature did before us, the object. Objects that have form and matter. And now Goethe starts not only to look at it, but to look at it in a way that he perceives everything that is there, and tries through the inner soul forces to create again what is already created. So he starts a will activity inside, not to look how it is formed, but which forces I need to create something like that is in front of me. And if you are living in that way, looking at things, that you recreate it again in your own soul, you experience the forces that are needed, you use a certain quality of forces you are able to use, and if you are connected with your own will, rebuilding what is in front of you, you get the idea of what it is. So it's the same way as the artist does, only in the other direction. And the difference is the inspiration for the artist is taken out of freedom. And the natural scientist is not free. He is free to look what object I take. But the idea that is connected to the object, there is no freedom. That is the science. But he makes science artistic, you could say. And that way to meet, to perceive what you see, that's a love action. So you could say Goetheanism is an erotic science. That's the only way to connect with something completely, if you love it. And normally we in our soul are reacting what I like and do not like. Sympathy and empathy. That's the first reaction if I see something. And that's of course subjective. The way we use that word, subjective. That cannot be science. And the scientific development we had developed the last several hundred years was so we have to put away every feelings. Because that is all subjective. To be objective, I have to put everything that I experience in my soul away. To be objective. Objective is if I play not any role. And Goethe does a different method. He educates his soul. To say, I don't ask, I like it or not. He has the soul with all the possibility to experience feelings, awaken. But he doesn't use it for itself, for himself. And so, if I am in love, connects to something, it's inside me. And if it's inside me, then it's in my soul. And if I don't use my soul capacities for myself, the object can show itself through my soul feelings. And if that comes to consciousness, I can formulate it as an idea. So it's a completely different way, a very different concept of objectivity. It's not that objectivity that we normally use. It's subjectively objective. And that's what he himself wrote in a short sentence. I was always asking myself, it's me or it's the object that is talking in me, inside me. So the question, where is my subjectively subjective part? And where are my feelings that I now get? Where are these feelings objectively? And that's what Dirk spoke about these experiences, these places of mysteries. That only as a small picture, what is perhaps connected to Goetheanism, and that changes a lot of me inside. I am not anymore thinking about something, but I start to learn to think out of something. Or to say it in another picture, normally if we meet something, we ask, oh, what do I get from you? Oh, what a nice nature, I feel so happy. And the way Goethe looks is not, what do you give me? But who are you? It's a completely different gesture. Who are you? And just a small remark, because I'm teacher in pedagogy. If you try to work out of these forces to understand something, you don't want anymore change children in a certain direction, because I don't like what they show me, and because it's not adapted to our community or so on. But I have only the question, who are you? Try to understand the other being in the way as it is. And the surprise is, if you look this way at children or other people, they start to change without therapy. But that's only and not to speak about Goetheanism, what I did now, but to give a short example, what different picture perhaps can be created out of that way to look at things. That's an embryonal development that is very interesting. To look at the gestures you see when the eye forms, our sense organ eye. How does it form? And it starts that formation in a very early state, when the embryo is still a flat plate, surrounded by an, I say now upper, just to have an orientation, an upper realm, the amnion, and a lower part, that is the dotosac, I don't know in English, with the yellow substance, the embryo. What is called? Doto.
Yeah, but it has a special alphabet.
Doto? Does it exist, the name Doto?
Yeah, yolk.
Yolk.
That's the,
Yeah.
the.
So you know about it, what I. Yeah. And all that is again surrounded by another realm, the chorion. But that what will be the body that is born, that is only that small plane. And I look now only at that realm where is the amnion and the liquid inside. And at that flat part of the body, we remark there develops now a small channel. And that channel becomes deeper and deeper. And then that channel closes upwards So we get a tube. A tube inside that embryo where the liquid of the amnion flows through. And then that tube closes in front and in the end. And when it's closed, that liquid that is not any longer in connection to the main liquid, that is excluded of it, that went inside the body, that liquid now impulses the Gewebe,
Tissue.
huh?
Tissue.
Issue. The tissue starts to develop and become nerves. And it's very interesting if that tube doesn't close in the part where the head develops. You will have a child that is born without brain and is not able to live. It's a so-called anencephalen. So there is no nerve system developed, an indifferent tissue. So nerve system develops only if that liquid of the amnion is in the body excluded from its nature. Understandable, the movement. I don't draw, I don't like these pencils. If there would be a chalk and blackboard, I would like them. So you need to create the picture inside yourself. And that's the only organ in the whole embryo that is not impulsed out of the body. All other organs develop out of body forces in the body that will be born. But the nerve system is impulsed by the liquid in the surroundings. When that liquid is not inside, separated, there will be no nerve system. And now that nerve system develops brain and spine, and from there, like roots of a plant, nerves are growing out to the surface of the body. And in the part where the brain is, part of the brain grows out like not a tube but a stab, stick, like sticks, with a bubble in front. And when that bubble meets the skin, it forms like a cave, a cube, and sucks part of the skin inside. That will be also separated from the other skin. And that part of the skin that goes inside becomes clear like glass or water or lenses. And all these different things around the eye. So our eyes, our brain, if we are looking in our eyes each other, we are looking at the brain of the other. And embryonal brain. So there is an organ that grows out of the brain and creates all these complicated things inside. We don't look at it now. But the main gesture is very interesting. And before I look at it, you can move that movement a little while I say something else. If you look at the development of our natural sciences the last several hundred years, beginning in the 17th century, very extremely with Sir Francis Bacon, who said we have to do research only empirically, because our thinking is able to make mistakes and the thinking will not find the mistake itself, because it's created by thinking. So we can only trust what we see empirically. We have to prove our thoughts in what we can do experimentally. And that developed very strong in the scientific world. And then in the 19th century, the materialism developed, and if we look at our sense activities, there is only physical-chemical reactions. So if I see there is something red, who says what is red? There's only a certain frequency of waves, energetic, and they create a certain chemical process, and then I have the feeling red. But it's red. Where do I know? So, in the end of the 19th century, also we're at the point that we are not able to trust our senses anymore. What the senses gives us as experiences, taste, smell, all these things, it's secondary phenomena. Phenomena that are not real, they are not physical. And there is no possibility to trust it. And that created a very difficult situation if you have been someone who, as a human being, wants to understand, to find truth. So is it. There's no possibility. If I cannot trust my thinking and I cannot trust my senses, there's no possibility. And that's in our scientific world now, the last 40 years at least, it developed very strong. There is not the question, can I find the truth? But can I find a theory that works? If it works, it's good. And if I find another theory that works better, I use that theory in the normal scientific world. Of course, there are also other scientists. But the main in the scientific world is, can I use it? And if you look at that gesture, that shows the development of the nerve system and the eye. And the same way everywhere, at the body surface, at the skin where the nerves are ending, our sense organs develop. All our sense organs develop that way, that the nerve meets the skin, and there is a small organ in the skin. But the eye is a very special. And if we now look at this, our body, when it develops, takes in that outer world, because that liquid in the amnion is the outer world for the embryo. It's the same surroundings for the embryo as the whole cosmos is after birth. Everything that is around. And that's that liquid of the amnion. So I take the outer world in. And only if the outer world is taken in, nerve system creates. Nerve system out of which sense organs develop. So the outer world comes inside, creates there an organ through which it is possible to look at the outer world. Or in other ways, through our eyes, nature looks at itself. And the moment you experience that movement, if you try to create again these forces that are needed to take in, to develop out of that what is taken in, an organ to look at what I have taken in. That is an inner will action. Of course, now very short. But I hope you can feel that skepticism or agnosticism. I cannot understand anything. Or what Kant formulated, the Ding an sich. The thing.
Think itself, yeah.
So we cannot find the last understanding of anything. That disappears. So every border, something to understand, is my capacities. My individual subjective capacities, they are, but I can develop them. There is not a principle situation that we could not understand something, if we are able to go that way, that what we perceive through sense organs to find the idea which created it. And that makes an inner experience of I can trust. I can trust. And that would be socially very important if you would like, would work like that. Because if you look how our social situation is formed out of I cannot trust. Trust is very important to be in harmony. And the forming forces we saw in the liquids, they are out of the liquid itself, the water, if I understood it. And the moment when we saw that simulation of blood flow in the heart, it was immediately to see that is now something else. And also the whole earth, these simulations. There is already physiology, means water movement connected to an idea. There is meaning. It's not just like this. And that meaning is already in the water itself. And that is form creating forces. And if I try to reach that point where I have no form, but the possibility to form, then I have a smell or a small taste of creation. That is creative forces. It's not to combine bubbles and sticks and to get chemistry. That's not understanding of chemistry. But if something becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, you see it becomes more and more movable. So to get an idea of what is connected to atom physics, to what a physician experiences in this real, you cannot think in form. There is only movement. But very formed movement. And then you get another picture. And if we look at the 20th century, the best philosophers were physics, atom physics. That's very interesting because you can see what quality they developed. They developed to think things that are connected to the outer world, but in that level where you don't have the normal physical object. In the quantum physics there is a lot to understand, but one point in the biography of Heisenberg, who is one of the fathers of the quantum physics, he writes about a meeting with Niels Bohr. Niels Bohr, who created that theory that the atom is built up like a small planetary system, with the sun and the planets or the nucleus and the electrons. And they were walking in Göttingen when Bohr told about that theory in the institute, and there was a private talk between Heisenberg and Bohr. And Heisenberg writes about what Bohr said. And now in my words I cannot wordly say how he wrote it. Bohr says, you know, what I'm talking about, these atoms, it's not like that. But when I try to talk about it, I feel like someone who is born in Central Europe, grown up in that culture, and comes on a small island in the Pacific. And there are people with a very different culture and with a completely different language. So we don't have the same culture, we don't have the same language, and nevertheless I have to explain something. In that way he feels what he experiences while he is scientist. And then when he tries to speak about it, that there is no words, no concepts for everything he experiences in our normal language. And in the same situation is on a very different level. For example, Rudolf Steiner, when he talks about hierarchies, archangels, or something else. But there is the other situation, you can get an imagination that is created out of the forces that is connected to that being. And that's the difference to the atom physics. But the difficulty, you meet situations where you don't have the words. So there is a necessity, in a certain way, to become more poet. Poets are able to use words in such a way that they create something through the combination of words that is not to say in words. And that's what you get in a poem. If it's not a love poem or a mood poem. But in the 20th century there are lots of poets, poems that try to create new concepts for what is not to say in our words. And that's something that is connected with Goetheanism. And we'll see how it will be next week, in which way we can have simple examples to try to experience that way, or we can have points where to look at something, to try to re-experience in a talk. That is our question, how we will be in the process. Sorry, but Goetheanism is not able to try to get a small feeling in 5 minutes. Thank you.